Welcome to Conversations. I am your host, Hannah Villani, and today I have a very exciting guest. Again, I say this every episode, but could be my favorite one so far. I don't know. I guess we're going to see. My friend Shire is a super fascinating person, has accomplished quite a lot and experienced quite a lot of life in just 21 years of existence, is currently a senior in college for business at NC State. He has studied abroad. He's traveled the world. He started a Discomfort Club in his college. He is doing all kinds of fascinating things that you just, I don't know, I feel like at first glance you would not even expect. So I am super excited to introduce and dive deep with a really interesting and unique individual. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. What an intro. I feel very honored. I'm excited to be on this podcast. I've heard a lot about it, and I know you're a great interviewer, so I'm super excited for this.
Excited to have you join me. I think that anytime that we get together, it's always a good talk. So a little background on how I met Shire. He was an attendee at the Possibility Festival. I've talked about that on my show before. So we met in Chicago in 2024, right? That sounds right.
I think
Yeah,
so.
it was 2024. And he was just such an electric energy. I was like, man, who is this guy? And have since confirmed that electric energy is really, I mean, that is just who you are at your core. And one of the things that I find the most interesting about you is your just desire to be uncomfortable and put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And so I wanted to kind of start off with diving into that. Like, at what point in your life did you realize that comfort doesn't equal happiness?
Yeah, I think there was like kind of a defining moment for me. I was probably a junior in high school. I think I was around 17. And honestly, I just felt like very lost and unsatisfied with my life. And I think I had been comfortable for a long time with like the same friends, doing the same thing, same sports, same routines. I just sort of felt a little bit empty. And I think I realized that there was a time where I need to challenge myself a little bit more. I think that's sort of when I first started diving into that and realizing that there's a lot more to life outside of the comfort zone.
Yeah. So when you kind of first start getting into like intentionally challenging yourself in that way, fear, of course, is kind of that like initial knee jerk reaction that really, I mean, it happens to everybody and is often kind of the deterrent of why people kind of go back and lean back into that comfortable, existence. So talk a little bit about your relationship with fear and kind of how that's evolved over years of training that muscle.
Yeah, I think for me, fear is something that I still deal with like on an everyday basis, even after doing like different challenges and stuff. And I think for a lot of my life, like fear controlled my actions, and I would stay like sort of in a bubble and not push past fear. Um, so I guess throughout my journey, like to be honest, like there's been a lot of times where like I've tried to do things, but I've like walked away of like I'm gonna do this today, and then I push it off. But I think every time, what I've learned is every time that I step into that fear, you just feel a sense of accomplishment and like pride in yourself that you're kind of overcoming it. And so I think for me, it's not something that necessarily goes away, but the more you step into something, like the less present it is. And I think that fear holds me back in a lot of ways, and it has in the past. And I just keep trying to flex the muscle of like pushing past it and kind of forcing yourself to show up.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about, what that was like, what was kind of one of those moments for you where you had that fear, you almost potentially went down the path of not doing it, out of habit, and then you kind of stopped and realized, you know what, let's step into this and see what happens, and then what happened?
Yeah. No, I have like a distinct memory with this one that I think is a good example. So I think for a long time in my life, I had like a fear of like drowning or like holding my breath underwater. And so I didn't really swim that much. Like I could swim for survival, but I wasn't actually a good swimmer. And so in high school, I tried to like get myself to face this fear. And so I remember in the mornings before school, like going to the pool and trying to get myself to go underwater as long as possible, holding my breath. And I was like, I want to make it to the other side of the pool, kind of thing. And I would do it at a local lake as well. I remember this one time I drove down to the local lake and I sat in my car for probably like 20 or 30 minutes, just like not wanting to get out and like try it. Eventually, I like forced myself out and I was like, okay, I'm going to do like 10 times, like go underwater, stay for as long as you can and see what happens. And so I started to do it. And I felt this like when I was underwater, I felt this fear, this like uncontrollable thing, like, get me out of here, kind of coming up. And then it must have been like the eighth or ninth one I did. And for some reason, when I did this, I just like the fear just completely went away. And I felt like I was like almost like a fish in like an aquarium, just like looking around and everything was like super like peaceful and calm. And this is probably like maybe the 15th or 20th time I had tried to do this. And I feel like something like unlocked where it was like the fear almost disappeared. And I think like to this day, like I'm not as scared as I used to be of like going underwater and drowning and stuff. But that was definitely an example of like when fear almost, got to me, but then I was able to get myself to show up.
Oof, that's a defining moment. And I'm sure lots of people can relate. Like, water is no joke. And some people really, I mean, that is a real thing. That's a real fear. Was just watching The Abyss the other night. I don't know if you've ever seen
Yeah.
that movie. But as a person who's afraid of that, I don't know. But, it could be good immersion therapy. But they're super deep under the water and like the thing is flooding and they have to
Yeah.
go and swim this like unbelievably long amount of time. And I'm just like, oh, I'm a swimmer and that is not, oh, that freaks me out. So
Yeah.
good on
It's
you for
definitely a
that.
good fear for a reason. Like I think it's like programmed in us. So I mean,
Right?
there's definitely still things I would not do underwater.
I mean, there's certain things, right? Like that's what the fear is kind of part of that lizard brain of ours. That is just that primal, like keeping us alive thing. And I was It is interesting that you mentioned that because I was listening to a podcast that Andy Frisella was doing the other day, and he was talking about how, like, way back when, when we lived in the caves, there was no the comforts and stuff that we have today didn't exist. You had to, all of your energy was expelled towards literally surviving. Are you going to eat? Are you going to be able to sleep? Are you going to not get eaten by a lion? Like, all of those things, that was our existence. And that's like the framework of our evolution in our brain. And so now that we don't have to, we can just go to our fridge and there's unlimited food and we are pretty much consistently comfortable and warm, and like all of those basic needs for many people, not everyone of course, but many, is already met. And so a lot of fear and anxiety and like negative mindsets and like getting stuck in stuff, a lot of that kind of comes from your body trying to find a way to process and express that energy that we were made to expel through survival. So what do you think about that, and just the usefulness or the irritation of living with fear and anxiety?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very real point of like, yeah, back in the day in our primal selves where we're just focused on survival. I mean, you are not in a comfortable state. So I think almost naturally as humans we're meant to not necessarily always be comfortable. And I also think that's like sort of reason why, I think this message is so important of doing things outside of your comfort zone. Because like back then it wasn't an option, it just was your reality. And now it's like in your everyday life, it has to be a choice because the default is comfort. And so now it's like, it's not like you have to deal with it no matter what. And it's like now you have to get yourself to deal with it, which can be a hard thing, especially when our brains are focused on safety and protecting us. And maybe that's seen as like an unsafe thing when we don't have to. I think that's something for me too, is like I almost feel like the necessity to, do something uncomfortable because it's like it feels like a need that I have. I don't know if you can relate, but I think sometimes when you're just in comfort, like it physically doesn't feel good and it mentally doesn't feel good as well. And it's like you want to find that escape kind of thing from that feeling.
Yes, I. What's interesting, you bring up like you mentioned your water story, and we talk about how that is kind of a reasonable fear because you can drown. Like that is something to be cautious about. And then there's the whole other side of like unreasonable fear where, if you stop and assess and you think, am I in danger? Am I safe? Yes, yes, okay, like let's take the next step. And it's so funny, like talking on a podcast, I have a fear of public speaking. Like I am terrified of
Really?
like public performance is like my kryptonite. It scares me like you can't even believe. And like I will only sing in front of my kids. Like that's it. And it's like a whole thing. But obviously I'm here and I'm doing this and I actually love to do this. And the other night we had a company party and it was karaoke night, and karaoke is one of my like biggest, I'm like, no, absolutely not, like my worst fear in the whole world. And I kind of stopped and I assessed and I was like, why am I being such a baby about this? Like literally nobody cares. The whole point of karaoke is to be look stupid on stage and like it's gonna be over. It's not nobody's I'm not gonna die up there. I'm not in actual danger. And I forced myself, it took me a while, but I forced myself to go up there, and Joe and I crushed Gangster's Paradise, and
So
it was fun. And like the whole mood of my night shifted. And it's so interesting the way that like such a profound feeling, and like it's almost like I don't know if you can relate, but it's almost like a high where you're like, oh yeah, like that was awesome, and you want to like keep like once you kind of conquer one fear, you're kind of like, wow, what else am I capable of, or how else can I feel this way?
yeah, no, that's funny. I never would have guessed that you had such a big fear of public speaking because I feel like you're very good at talking in front of groups and like communicating. And I
Yeah,
guess it
I mean
doesn't
it's
fall.
funny. Like I
Yeah.
had always dreamed of doing it, and like public speaking is something that I really do want to pursue. And doing the podcast and the radio show and stuff is my favorite hobby, hands down, forever. And I'm excited to continue to grow it. And I think that's an important lesson for people that sometimes some of your greatest strengths are buried underneath some of your greatest fears.
Mm, that's a good one.
Where would you say, outside of just the obvious of, gaining some confidence and, facing these fears and kind of moving through, what is something about you that you have noticed that is different or changed for the better that, isn't necessarily directly associated, but is definitely a side effect of you living this way?
I would say I'm like way more open-minded and receptive to things than I used to be. I think in the past, like I was closed-minded on certain things and not always accepting of things. And I think now, especially with like new opportunities, like I usually am uh, pretty much say yes no matter what. I mean, sometimes I say no depending on what it is, but I would just say I'm a lot more open to other people's perspectives too. And I think maybe that was one of my goals originally, but it wasn't like clearly expressed. But I feel like now I'm much more less judgmental than I used to be. I think especially when I started, I was much more judgmental of myself and other people, and I think now I'm more like accepting than I used to be. And I don't know if it's because of that or just like getting older, but I don't know. I feel like that's something that's definitely changed in me since I started.
That's fantastic. That's a really good one. I like to hear that. I feel like it is kind of a mix of both of those things because as I've gotten older, I've definitely shared that sentiment. It used to be like, very black and white of like, this is this and this is that, and that's all there is to it. And yeah, but sometimes it's not always the case. Just because you're getting older doesn't necessarily mean you get more open minded. There's, many people I know that have gone the opposite direction. And I would say a big part of that is just the way that you look at things and that putting yourself in these situations where you can have a life experience that helps shape, open up a broader understanding of what existence is. So I think that is a fantastic thing that you have been able to harness that at such a young age. That's really great.
Yeah,
You're gonna go far, kid.
thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I would love to talk a little bit about um, your mental toughness club and your discomfort club. at the college. How did that come to be? Why did you start it? And where has it gone since its inception?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I guess backstory. I guess I started doing things outside my comfort zone in high school, and I noticed a lot of growth in myself. And I also would make like little social media videos as well. And people started to come up to me and be like, "Yo, like this is super helpful for me. Like you're helping me," and I didn't realize I was having an impact. So when I sort of got to college, um, typical business major, as I was applying to colleges, I was almost like treating it like a business pitch of like, what can I provide to this university? And so I just had this idea of like, what if I started this club where people do things outside of their comfort zone for growth? And so I wrote that like my college applications about that. And when I got to school, I kind of just went ahead and got started. And so it started off as like a tiny, tiny community, like maybe 4 or 5 of my friends just getting together for like a run or to do rock climbing or something like that. And over the past 3 years, it's really grown. I mean, we probably reached over like 300 members like total, and also we've run some big events with hundreds of people. We probably have a consistent community of around like 40 people who come out like week to week and who are super invested in it. And it's changed a lot. It used to be a lot of just like physical challenges, but I think we've expanded it too to like focus on like mental health stuff, artistic, creative things like yeah, like we're doing like sometimes we're doing like jujitsu, or we're doing like bringing someone who knows how to make characters, and we're learning how to draw, uh, or a lot of different things. We've even gone like skydiving too. So it's really grown a lot since I first started, and it's been really cool to see uh, what it's grown into.
What would you consider like if you can just name one, over the years of the growth and everything and the people that have come through the club and have been a participant, what is a success story that just really you feel like you'll carry with you forever because of just somebody in the group that really maybe wouldn't have had an experience if it wasn't for that club?
Yeah. Um, I would say like one of my close friends, Veer. I think he's definitely a success story. Like, um, I remember the first time he showed up, we were doing like a midnight run, and he didn't know what to expect, and it was just like me and like 2 other guys, and he didn't know if we were gonna like jump him or something. But he came into the club, and he was definitely young, and like you could tell he was hungry, but he still had like a lot to learn. And over the past like 3 years, like he's become like a leader in our club. Like he runs like the head of our like recruitment team and stuff. And it's just been really inspiring to see him step outside of his comfort zone, like with like public speaking and getting into like sales stuff. And like, it's cool, like from my perspective, to just watch him. Like I watched him like basically grow into like a man from like, that first point. And just, he's got a lot of good values, and he's always pushing himself. So I think that's been a really inspiring story to see, especially because like I saw him from the first day he was with us and to like where he is now. So that's been pretty cool.
Shout out to Veer.
Shout out Veer.
Love that. So you are graduating in just a few short months, and what do you have, do you have a plan to pass on the club to the next group? Is it going to stay alive after you leave, or does it die with you? What happens?
Yeah, so obviously the goal is to keep it going, and that's been sort of part of my work the last couple of months. But we have like a new president in place, and basically a leadership team. So on my side, like I've just been trying to make it as systematic as possible, as easy to follow as possible. And one thing that I've also been focusing on now is expanding it to other schools. So we're launching down the road at UNC Chapel Hill in the spring, and we're trying to get some more schools on board as well. So currently, my focus has just been like creating systems, creating a playbook so that people can kind of run this on their own. But the goal would to be to expand it to a bunch of different universities eventually.
Well, any university faculty, staff, students, anyone who's listening that wants to start something like this, we got the framework already at NC State. We'll get you
Shout
hooked
out.
up. You heard it
Yeah.
here first, or
Yep.
second, depending. So, what is the plan for you? I mean, you're going to graduate with a business degree. You have, You have collected quite a bit of life experience. And are you going to continue? Are we looking at master's level? Are we looking at internship? What's your plan? Do you know?
Yeah. So I'm definitely ready to get out of school. So hopefully no
Yeah.
more school for a while. That's the goal. Currently, actually, with that friend I mentioned, Veer, we're currently working on building something that's like somewhat related to this, involving like, developing people, but also getting them experience with sales as well. So I'm trying to build that up, and maybe I could do that after graduation. But I would love to continue doing stuff in this space. I've been doing like some workshops and things for teams, like to get outside their comfort zone. And I'd like to get into speaking more as well. But I don't know. I'm still passionate about this stuff, and I'd like to continue to do it in the future in some way.
Now, speaking of speaking, you recently put your application in to do a TEDx talk. Is that right?
Yes, yes, I did.
Tell me about that and that experience and why you even decided to do it in the first place.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, so there was a TEDx event at my school in the spring, and me and my friend Indio, who went to the Possibility Festival, we both were like, all right, let's apply for this, let's do it. And me and him have been wanting to get into like speaking and telling our story for a while, and we saw this as an opportunity to really develop out our story and framework. And so I proposed to give a talk similar to the Discomfort Club stuff. But basically, the idea is like how setting like long-term challenges for yourself and committing to them can help you like change your identity and help you grow. And so, yeah, I applied to give a TED talk with no expectations at all. I procrastinated it. I submitted it literally at 11:59, and it was due at 12. So barely got the application in, sped through it. Wasn't expecting anything at all. Somehow got a response back that I had an interview. So I was excited. Literally spent an hour or a week long preparing for this interview. I was on ChatGPT just voice texting like, hey, give me a mock interview, all this stuff. And so I get in the interview. They asked me a bunch of questions about the talk. And by this point, I had like a lot of clarity in what the talk was going to be about. And I felt like the interview like went amazing. And I was like, let's go, like maybe giving a TED talk. And then I got an email back and they're like, hey, unfortunately, it was a competitive pool, the classic email. But basically, I got rejected. So it definitely stung a little bit, but it was a fun experience and I'm glad that I did it.
I mean, you are captivating. I mean, all of your videos are interesting. I mean, just this conversation so far is really great. I think you
Thank you.
have all of the right mindset and the skill set to do it for sure. So I guess maybe we'll see each other at a TED event.
Yeah, hopefully. I'd like to see your TED
Yeah,
talk
right?
too.
Oh my gosh, I that's been on my vision board forever. That is definitely a thing that would love to check that box
Definitely will
off. So
happen.
we'll have to get, the possibility crew, the TEDx possibility, and just have a whole. There's a lot of great speakers in that group. It
True.
is,
Yeah.
it's something special. So you mentioned something about using ChatGPT to give you a mock interview. First of all, I never thought to do that, so thank you. That's genius. Um, Two, you are you were born in this technological world in this digital era and have kind of grown up with technology just here, and it's grown a lot and you have access to all of those kinds of things. But with that, the like ChatGPT, for example, there's kind of a bad rap. A lot of people think that using that is actually, and having that introduced is actually going to make people less productive and less, being able to process thought and things like that. But you just used an example where it actually helped you get better at something. So, what are your thoughts on AI and the use of it as, a tool versus a crutch, and just the way that it's being integrated into the world? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good, but also a lot of bad involved with it. And I think it's something that's upon us and a lot of people are scared of it. Um, but a lot of times there's like no real way around it. Like I think it's going to impact everyone, like whether you like it or not. Um, And I think, like you're saying, like, yeah, there's different use cases. Like, I think people can use it and rely on it in a way that will not have them think critically. And it will actually, yeah, probably not make them as productive. But there'll also be those people who really use it to their advantage to help them get better, help them improve, and make things more efficient. So I think a lot of it is around education of like, how do you properly use AI? Because I mean, anyone can go into ChatGPT and write a prompt, but the people who are having the most success with AI, that's not how they're using it. So I think a lot of it is there's a big lack of education around AI nowadays, and I think that's creating a lot of fear because I think like people have fear of the unknown, and then I think there is a disconnect of like the people at the top have all the power. They're the ones making the algorithms and like using AI sometimes as a weapon. And then like your average person, it's like there's someone who sort of knows what they're doing and using it to their advantage. And then there's people who are like, don't use it at all. And I think right now there's just a big disconnect in education on AI and also like the use cases. And I think I as well like am not as educated as I could be, and I think I could be using it better. But I was thinking it's about how you choose to do it. I think with technology and this stuff, it's super easy to become like lazy in your thinking and mentally, which I've definitely fallen victim at some points. But it's just like the awareness of like using it to enhance you and not replace you, I think is a good frame.
Enhance you, not replace you. I love that. You just said something too about your awareness of recognizing when you're kind of falling into whatever trap or whatever negative thing or whatever shortcoming or addressing a weakness. How do you work through, getting that awareness? If you're, speaking to a person who maybe wants to be more aware and knows that they have some work to do but doesn't know how to activate that awareness, what do you do and how did you establish that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps to be, I guess, like digitally native. Grew up in a time with technology, and not everyone is there. Like, I mean, there's still some people in like the older generation, like my parents' generation, who are like they're still trying to figure out the internet. So I think there's different steps, and I think for me, like in my age demographic, there's an easier learning curve, and more people in our peer group are using it more often. But I also do think a lot of resources are out there that are digestible on how to use it, and you just have to be willing to make the time to look into it. I mean, I think most people like know that like YouTube is a great resource for basically anything you want to learn in the world. But I think most people just are getting stuck in this cycle of like being afraid of something they don't know about and not wanting it to happen, but then continually not educating themselves on what it is, and then just repeating that cycle. So I think it starts with you a little bit of like the willingness to educate yourself and learn because especially with technology, like the resources are out there at least to an extent, and like you can learn it or try a new tool. So a lot of it is like you kind of have to be self motivated to actually go out there and try it.
You're spot on. And being a younger millennial, I grew up kind of at the tail end of it. I feel like my age group is really the last ones to have one foot in and the non-digital and have memories growing up without all of that, and then also kind of coming of age as all of that was being introduced. Like it's kind of interesting how each generation is impacted by and how they respond to technology in general. I'm really fascinated to see the studies and stuff that kind of come out as my kids and those generations grow up, and what that does in the long run. It's kind of interesting, but like you said, there's positive to it and there's a negative to it, and one of the glaring negatives of technology and the internet and stuff is the destruction of community and connection. And we're seeing that in our youth, and just the mental health crisis, and a lot of that stems from the introduction of technology and major isolation in everyday moments. So enter Possibility Festival. I would love to hear a little bit, from you as being a younger person that grew up in a digital age. And how did you hear about Possibility Festival? What interested you about, connection? Since there's kind of this stereotype of, younger people and Gen Z that, like, you don't want to be in person, like you would rather be behind a screen, and obviously that's not true. So how did you, kind of get into that ecosystem? What attracted you to that concept, and what did
Yeah.
you learn from it?
Yeah. I think I've always been someone who loves in-person connection and talking to people and meeting new people and like being extroverted. And so I think like periods like the pandemic where people were alone was super difficult for me. And I definitely noticed like my mental health declined. Uh, I think even to this day, sometimes not even realizing it, like I will isolate myself, whether it's like with work and stuff, and not make as much time for social connection. But every time I get back to a place of being isolated to connected, I realize this is like a staple I need in my life. And so I think, even with the club I've built, like it's all about connection and community. And that's something I've always valued. In terms of how I got into Possibility Festival, I'd say there's one individual who's responsible for a bunch of my friends getting involved with Possibility Festival, and that is Parker Mays. Was I think he went to the first ever. He's been to almost every Possibility Festival out there, and he's definitely the right person for this. He's a super connector, always loves talking to people, investing in people, has like amazing like golden retriever energy, and so I think he's very representative of the festival as a whole. And so I met him probably 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and uh, and he's like, "You have to read this," and it's basically the
Yes.
story of like uh, yeah, it's basically the story of like four guys who were, post college, wanted to figure something out. And so basically, they create this community to get together young, successful entrepreneurs to talk about what they're doing. And since then, they build this like amazing, thriving community, throwing massive events with like Bill Clinton and a bunch of famous people. Um, he bought a mountain at some point. So I was just very inspired by this story. And then once I read that book, he was like, okay, now you got to read this book. But basically, that is written in one day. It was like 12 hours straight. I just like was so dialed in on it. And I just loved his story. We're renting an Airbnb and you're coming to the Possibility Festival. Basically, gave us no choice. We didn't really know what to expect. Um, but we all just said yes. Um, there's a lot that happened between now and then, but that was definitely the start of it all.
What was the moment out of all of the stuff that we experienced in Chicago that weekend that that it just lit you up and just filled your cup beyond measure and, sent you home a changed person?
Yeah, I would say there was a whole lot of moments that weekend. I would say definitely one of the biggest ones was the Giving Safari, which basically you have like 2 hours to spread as much joy to wherever you're at. We were in Chicago, the people as possible. And at first, my group was like struggling to figure out what we wanted to do for it. Eventually, we decided that we were going to get chalk and make like a massive dance circle in Hyde Park, which is like a very, very high traffic park. And so we started blasting music and dancing, and people of all ages, like little kids, older people, like literally everyone just stopped and danced with us, and we could feel we spread a lot of joy. And I think in that moment, I felt very purposeful, very connected, and like very alive. Honestly, I think this whole weekend, especially with Possibility Festival, I just it's a place where I feel the most like myself. Like I feel like it brings the essence of everyone out of themselves. And it's just a cool place to be. And I think I left the weekend. First of all, my mental health was probably the best it's ever been. I felt so energized, so alive. Like it was an intense feeling, but um, I think it was just very transformative. And I don't think, like, if I didn't feel that way leaving the weekend, I don't know if I would continue to be involved. But I think that really, the whole weekend was pretty transformative.
Yeah, our dance party was like the best ever. That was so much fun. And the super soakers that we bought that like we gave the kids and the bubbles and just I don't know, seeing people. There were some people that like went by and they were like, "I'm not getting in that circle," because we drew
Yeah,
it right in the middle of the path. So anybody riding their bike or walking or running or anything that they were doing, like they were
have
gonna
to go through.
be they were going to be victimized by our dance circle and they had to either run from it or embrace it. And the way that some people like walked all the way around because they were like, I'm not getting in that thing, was like so funny to me. But then there were some people that they did that initially and then they like came back and they were like, what is this? And they ended up having fun. And yeah, that was so great. I was that was like one of the moments that I really like enjoy the most as well, and reflect most fondly on was the giving safari. So I definitely agree with that. Um, so you read Make No Small Plans. You read The Third Door. You know, you got to know Alex. You did the Possibility Festival. Why did you decide that you wanted to participate in actually hosting an event of your own?
Yeah. I'm curious to know the answer for you as well. But I think for me, like, I mean, it was sort of a no-brainer because I saw like the impact that it had on people, and I wanted to be part of it, like, and do that for my own community. And I think like realistically, like the Possibility Festival was like such a dream event, like, and I was like very much admiring the people who organized it. I was like, this is a really cool event, super well organized, and I think like creating the opportunity to host our own was just like a no brainer, and it was very aligned with what I was already doing and what I wanted to be doing. So for me, it was a no brainer. But I'm curious to know what made you want to do that.
Yeah, it was kind of a no-brainer for me too. um, I have a history in community organizing just through like my political stuff and advocacy stuff. And when he mentioned, if anybody wanted to host something in their community, I was like, oh my gosh, like that is so up my alley. I would love to do that. I mean, in any chance to work with Alex, like I'm 100% in, like guaranteed. Like he's definitely a huge just influence in me, and like that aside from just the excitement of sharing that with my community, I also felt like an obligation to give back to Alex and help Alex because he didn't even know me and he had such a big impact on my life. And then when he did actually begin to get to know me, he had continued to have a profound impact on my life. And I wanted to, it seemed like an opportunity for me to be able to pay it forward to him and help him with something that he was really passionate about. And so those two things, kind of combined. And in 2023, I ran for mayor, and that was really draining and really difficult. And 2024 was a really hard year, just like emotionally recovering from that. And I realized that, I the big the whole reason that I ran was because I cared about my community and I wanted to connect the dots and bring people together and prove that you can have different viewpoints and come from different angles but still work together to get the job done. And that was the reason that I ran. It wasn't for recognition or a career move or anything like that. And being involved in politics for my whole life and doing that, it really made me feel like there's got to be a better way that we can bring community together without involving politics in it. Because as we have seen and as we continue to see, the government is not set up to actually support us and help us. That's not their goal. Their goal is not to make us any better. And we can't expect and sit around and wait for them to save the world. We have to save ourselves, and we have to have that butterfly effect on the people around us and come together and help ourselves. And the Possibility Festival is just like a no fluff, no red tape, free, simple way to get that message to people and help spread joy and reignite connection, which I think is like the answer to everything. So
For sure.
there's my long-winded answer.
No, that's awesome. I mean, that's very inspiring. Uh, and I would, if I was there, I
Yeah.
would have voted for you, mayor. So, you know,
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I voted for myself. I did vote for myself. So,
let's go.
um, you probably won't see me on the ballot again for a while, but you'll always see me behind the scenes fighting the good fight. Um, but future possibility festivals, gosh, I can't wait. I'm like already I've already been turning the gears on how to improve on it. So I would love to get a quick little synopsis on how your possibility festival went. I mean, obviously there was a period where you were in Spain for a whole semester, which was like a big part of like where the planning kind of was happening and stuff. So I'd love to hear, as a host, what that was like planning an event like that, how the event went, and if you plan to do more with that in the future.
Yeah, I would say like from start to end, it was just like an extremely fun process because my co-hosts were like three of basically like my best friends. Um, and so like those initial sessions of like planning were just like really fun because people were just throwing out like crazy ideas of like where we should host it and everything like that. And so I would say the process like definitely took a lot, but it didn't really feel like work. It just felt like this was something that I'm doing that's super important and it felt super purposeful. So every time I worked on it, like it never felt like a burden or a dread. It just felt like good. And I really enjoyed that process and working with some of my best friends. Um, and I think, yeah, like going into it, we were obviously nervous and had doubts of ourselves and how it was going to go, if people were actually going to show up. Um, and I think over the course of the weekend, it really went better than we ever could have expected. I think day one we had like 90 people there, which was amazing to see. And also Alex and Mario were there, like the founders of it. All the parts that we, were nervous about, um, especially the opening keynote, which is like a very long speech that's kind of memorized. Everything ended up like working out really well. And so it was just an amazing weekend. It definitely feels different to be a host versus a participant. And you don't get like necessarily the full experience, but it feels really good to be providing that for other people. So
Yeah,
I loved it.
even if
Yeah.
it's just one person,
Yeah. No,
which definitely with 90 people there is definitely more than one person. So good job
yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
What about
fantastic.
yours?
Um, it was great. I mean, it was like the best thing ever. It was literally every single thing that could have gone wrong went wrong times 10. And
Oh
so
no.
I think the message that was received by me and the lesson that I learned, I think, was just letting go and letting things be what they are and being okay with it instead of holding whatever the expectation versus reality, and just letting both of those things flow naturally, which has always been a struggle of mine. And that weekend definitely tested that for sure. It rained like I have never seen before in that, like, that weekend. I picked that weekend because I was like, it's always really nice. Like, it's one of the last weekends in July. Like, it was so stormy. We ended up having, like, at 5 in the morning of the event, I had to like, I was calling around trying to find a place to move indoors because we were having like torrential downpour and thunderstorms and everything. And Mason and Indio had flown out to like and were staying with me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't want them to come out here for nothing. I'm not canceling it, and all of these people are like counting on me to do this. So we ended up getting in a community center, and we hosted the weekend, that first day, the Saturday, inside, and had to like basically just fly by the seat of our pants. Thank goodness for my co-host Allison. Shout out to Allison. It
Shout out
was
Allison.
so great at just like the operations side of things and just like holding it together um, in that way. And um, it was profound. It was beautiful. We had like maybe 40 or so on the first day, and then like 15 or 20 on the second day. So it was a small thing, but the weather was like literally terrible. Sunday, so like I've never been so hot and sweaty in my life. It was like 100% humidity, like Florida level heat. And we were playing dodgeball. And so like, it was nuts. But we had a great time. I learned so
Yeah,
much, and I'm so excited to like take that and expand it for 2026. So, absolutely like no complaints about the whole thing. I'm glad it happened the way that it did because it taught me a lot, and it also showed, I think, a different side of what Possibility Festival can be, um, on a smaller scale. So yeah, it was great. Highly recommend it. Anybody listening, keep tabs on Possibility Festival because there is a lot coming down the pipeline. I'm not gonna say what, but
for
I am
sure.
gonna say that you're gonna want to be keyed in. So
100%.
I would love to double back and talk a little bit about your experience living and studying abroad. Because, for one thing, that's just so cool. And for another thing, that is studying abroad is the thing that I always really wanted to do. And then it's like one of the things that I never got the opportunity to do because I had a baby at 18. So, being able to go to another country and study in university in a different culture and environment is so fascinating to me. So I want to live vicariously through you and hear about your experience and share it, so I can soak all that goodness up.
Yeah. So last semester I studied in Madrid, Spain. And I think it definitely fit the motto of living outside of your comfort zone. Because I feel like, especially in the beginning, the adjustment was a little bit difficult. Like, um, I definitely had taken Spanish before, and was okay. Like I could do like a basic conversation, and I guess I underestimated how important it would be because basically when you get in Madrid, like people know English, but like you're gonna hear Spanish like 99% of the time. So I think in the beginning it was a little bit of a hard adjustment. Um, but yeah, like kind of going back to like our word of the day of like connection and community. Luckily, I had a group of, I think it was 5 girls from my university who I was friends with, and they lived in an apartment with like 18 people. And these were international people from Spain, people from France, Mexico, like you name it, like everywhere. And it was cool because that became like my kind of community and friend group while I was abroad. Like we would go out together, we would meet people, we would have meals, events together, and that was super nice to have. And it was just so cool, like living in another country. It just yeah, it was great. I kept reminding myself, I'm like, you know what, you're never gonna be like this free of responsibility in your life because maybe you'll get to travel in the future, but like you'll probably have other responsibilities. There, I was literally like barely studying because school was a joke, and I was just living in Europe and just traveling and living my best life. So I tried to savor every.
I love how honest you were about that.
No, yeah,
Oh man, that's fantastic. That is the coolest thing ever. And I keep telling my kids, I'm like, I'm not telling you what to do, but I strongly encourage you to go and study abroad or live somewhere else just like while you're young. Do it while you're young because it'll never get easier than that. And I love that, and just that ability to go out and experience something outside of our little bubble, I'm sure contributed to your expansion of just understanding of, the world and, comparatively of like what your perspective on the world is. What would you say was the most surprising thing that you experienced and or learned while you were studying, well, while you were living, gallivanting through Europe?
yeah. I would say I would say there was one defining day where something really unexpected happened, and by reflecting back on it, I learned a whole lot about Spanish culture in particular. And so I'll tell this story because I think it's a good representation of my study abroad. Okay, so I believe the day was April 27th. I believe it was a Monday,
Okay.
and the day before I had run the Madrid marathon. So I was pretty dead. I was very tired. And so that night of the marathon, like I basically had like no food in my house, like whatsoever. But I was like, I'm too tired, like I'll go in the morning. Like whatever. Uh, and so I was just very dead. I wake up on that Monday. Maybe I'm doing schoolwork. Probably not. I wasn't doing my schoolwork while I was there. But I'm on my computer and like the Wi-Fi cuts out. And so I quickly go to my roommate. I'm like, what's happening? Why isn't there Wi-Fi? And she's like, I can't place a call either. And so we go down our street and we see people like flooding out of the grocery store. We look on our entire street, power's out. And we're like, okay, I guess power's out on our street. And I go on a little walk and each street I go down, there's no power. The traffic lights aren't working, crazy traffic, like everything is going wrong. And so I'm like, all right, like what is happening? Like what's going on? And so uh kind of as we kept going, we kept hearing like, okay, this street's out. Okay, now part of Madrid is out. Now all of Madrid is out. And eventually got to the point of like where all of Spain was out of power, France was out of power, and like part of Germany. And there was these like nationwide blackouts, and we didn't know what to expect. And I was basically just like solo the entire day. Like, that community, that group of 18, they had their own experience that day, but I had no way to contact them. And I was just like completely solo. And so people were talking about like, oh, it's like cyber terrorism. Like people didn't know what was going on. And so usually the people in Madrid are very calm. You could tell they're a little bit more stressed than usual, but they were still like not as bad, you know. And so I go back to my apartment, and keep in mind, day after the marathon, hadn't eaten all day, and I realized like I don't have any like physical cash on me. So I'm like on my hands and knees, like in my room, trying to find any euros I can find. I managed to scrap together like 3 euros worth of coins. And so I'm like, all right, like let's go find something to eat with 3 euros. And so I go to this little like convenience store, and I'm able to buy like a pack of chorizo. And I was able to negotiate with the guy. I couldn't quite afford it, like these little breadsticks. And so I was like, all right, that's my meal. And so I go to this like little park that we used to always go to. And it was just cool to see because everyone had just gone to the park with their friends, and they were having picnics, and they were making the most of this day where, it could have been super stressful for people, but people literally just like made the most of it. And it was really funny because when you're on the main street, everyone left work and they just flooded the bars. So everyone was just drinking, having fun at the bars, just like, just making the most of the situation. And I was just thinking of like, what if a nationwide blackout happened in the United States? And I'm thinking people would be like hoarding toilet paper. People would start raiding stores. It would get violent. People would isolate themselves. Like completely different experience. But here, like people just started to appreciate the day, spent the day off of work with their friends, and really just like made the most of the situation. And I think that really summed up the Spanish culture. And I had my chorizo. I found a couple of my friends. Eventually, the power came on later that day, and everything was good. But it was a crazy day, crazy experience for people. I had friends who went to school 40 minutes away by train, and they had to walk back 3 hours on the highway. So I was lucky that I was near my house. So yeah.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. I remember that was in the news. I
Yeah.
remember that happened. And because we were getting ready to go to Europe in June, and we were like, there was like earthquakes in Greece and massive power outages across Europe, and we were looking at each other like, well, we'll see what happens out there, won't we? But wow, oh my gosh. I love that you were able to experience that. And I think that is such a testament to, like you said, just the culture of um, the Spanish culture, because are they just kind of take things as they come, it seems. And I feel like the United States culture as a whole could really use a boost in that department of just, we're so reactive, just culturally, I feel like. And it's getting to a level that is very just tasteful, in my opinion.
I agree.
And, one of the best things ever to do is when you're having a bad day, like finding just a way to appreciate whatever you can. And it can really make a terrible situation into a manageable situation. So I'm grateful that you shared that story, and thank you for sharing that here, because that was a good one, and that's a good reminder for anybody listening. If the entire country of Spain can work through a power outage of that level, you can get through whatever it is that you're dealing with today.
Your Starbucks order getting wrong, whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly. Your latte that had too much foam, it's gonna be okay. Your client that was, late and made the whole day, go late, it's gonna be okay. Because the great thing about this game of life is that every 24 hours it resets. You get to do it again tomorrow. And I feel like that gets lost on us a lot of times. And that is
That's a great
actually something that I'm
perspective.
really working on right now. Is that this is, you can look at the macro and you can zoom out and see, like, where you want to go, at least, identify it on the map so you know the direction. But the only way to get there is through those little 24-hour steps each day is going to pass. And the only way to get from here to there is through just one step at a time, one day at a time.
100%.
Yes, that's a tough one. So, where to next? What's the next country that you want to visit? What do you have your eyes set on, and why?
Yeah. So, yeah, me and my friends are actually making some plans for spring break, and I think that we're going to Brazil, which I'm pretty excited
Oh
about.
my gosh.
Um,
Yes.
and the reason why, well, I don't know. I feel like in the last couple of years, like my travel plans have been very like serendipitous. Like I'm like I've always wanted to go here, and then somehow it just like magically works out. And so I've been telling myself for the last like 8 months, like my next place is South America. Like I'm going. And so my friend earlier this week was like, "Hey, we have two friends that we used to live with and study abroad who live in Sao Paulo, and they're like, what if we went there and rent an Airbnb with them?" So I think maybe Brazil might be the next place, the next destination. So I'm pretty excited.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
for you. Is that like a bucket list thing for you to travel the world? Is that something you've always wanted to do, or is this a newer venture since you studied abroad?
yeah. I think it's always been something that I've wanted to do. I think my family definitely values travel and has always like pushed us to do that and to travel. And I think from my own experiences of going to Europe and just traveling around is like I don't know. It just feels very fulfilling to learn about different cultures and to be on the move. I don't know. I just feel like more like myself, and like uh, I am very lucky to have these opportunities, and I know a lot of people don't get these opportunities. So I'm definitely very grateful for that as well. And yeah, love to travel.
Me too. Bucket list. All 50 states, all seven continents, all major bodies of water. It's happening.
There you go.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. So I have a quick little rapid fire round to finish this
Okay,
off. But
let's do it.
before I do that, where can people find you out there in the interwebs or otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram. That's probably the best way to reach me. Motivational underscore Shire. Give me a follow. I make videos also on LinkedIn, Shire Thompson. Would love to connect to you over there. Can check out our website, like thediscomfortclub.com. Yeah, that's kind of like where I tend to be.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I am going to do a quick little rapid fire here for you. It's a little different. I want to do a rapid fire advice section, and I'm just gonna kind of like fire off like some terms or anything, and then I want you to just first thing that comes to mind advice on that subject for anybody
Okay.
who's listening that may,
All right. I like
that's
this.
looking for a nugget. Okay.
Love
All
me
right.
some
So
unsolicited
first one.
advice.
Yes, we love it. No, this is super solicited. I'm here for it. Okay, ready? First piece of advice on fear.
First piece of advice on fear is don't let it control you and break it down into bite-sized pieces. So if you're afraid of snakes, you can start with small things like, looking at a snake, watching a documentary on that. Don't bite off everything you can chew at once. Break it down into small bite-sized pieces.
Excellent. Managing rejection.
Managing rejection is a hard one and something that I'm still struggling with today. But I would say don't take it personal, and then also take a lesson from each rejection so that you feel like it's helping you out, and then continually stepping into it and realizing that like there's something better on the other side.
Embracing authenticity.
Embracing authenticity. I think it starts with spending time alone with yourself and figuring out who you are as a person before you can be authentic and show up. I think it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but if you don't have a deep understanding of who you are, I think it's hard to be authentic.
About building community.
Building community. I would say start with where your feet are at, whether that's in your own household, building community, or in your own town. I know online communities can be good, but I would say start where you're at and make an impact where you are before you try to expand.
Okay. Last one. I only wrote those ones down, but I feel like I want to give one more. So now I'm giving myself a rapid fire to create a rapid fire.
Wow.
Okay. Let's go with love.
Love.
Love. Let's finish it out with love.
Let's finish it out with love. I would say that love doesn't necessarily need to be like that typical thing of like romance. I think there's a lot of different forms of love, like whether it's self-love and compassion, like, on a hard day, like, not being hard on yourself. There's love of people. Like you don't have to be in a relationship to love someone. And I think that we should show more love for the people in our life every single day. And I think probably one of the most important things is also like having a love of life. And I think Hannah's someone that represents that really well. Is like just relentlessly loving life and just expecting like good things to happen. I think that's super important as well.
Way to finish it
That's
off.
my rapid fire.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I know. Let's do a whole like second hour of rapid fire. We'll schedule that for another day.
Yeah.
So tune in. We're gonna have Shire and Hannah 2.0 one of these days here.
Yep.
So thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to be vulnerable and share your story and continue to motivate and inspire and set a higher standard for everybody. It's so refreshing, and in this crazy world where everything is just so negative being shoved down your throat all the time, it really is reassuring to speak to and get to know people like you and share your mindset and perspective, because I feel like that is just a big part of what's going to heal our society and our world and make things better. So thank you for being you and for being here and for sharing your awesomeness.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And I want to acknowledge you as well for being a force for good in the world, and probably one of the most relentless people I've ever met. So you're very strong-willed, and it's all for a good reason too. I think you're doing amazing things.
I appreciate that. That's a really good way to call me stubborn. I like it. All right. Well, everybody, this has been a great episode of Conversations. Make sure you follow the show. Make sure you follow Shire, and all of the links and recommendations and everything is going to be in the show notes. Ta-ta.